Good morning. We welcome and thank you for joining us for the official launch of the Rhode Island Domestic Violence Homicide 2016-2020 report. My name is Lucy Rios. I'm the Executive Director of the Rhode Island Coalition Against Domestic Violence. We are honored to have with us today Lieutenant Governor Sabina Matos and Deputy Attorney General Goldstein. Thank you both for being here with us. We've invited you all to gather at Memorial Park for this event because we wanted to share the report near the Victims' Grove Memorial, a dedicated place in Rhode Island to remember and honor victims of crime. Today, we remember the 26 Rhode Islanders we lost to domestic violence from 2016 to 2020. Each of these victims were beloved members of our community before their lives were stolen by domestic abuse. Collectively, they leave behind children, parents, grandparents, siblings, and many other family members and loved ones, friends, colleagues, and neighbors. In the wake of this tremendous loss, we are called to honor their lives while working collectively to keep Rhode Islanders safe and prevent domestic abuse in Rhode Island. This homicide report is the second of its kind, produced by the Rhode Island Coalition Against Domestic Violence. The first was released in 2016. Within the report, you will find data and descriptions reflecting the domestic violence homicides that occurred during the 5-year period, including the COVID-19 pandemic year of 2020, where we saw a record increase in calls to domestic violence hotspots in Rhode Island. We have also included information about national research, best practices, and policy trends. With increased awareness about these continued tragedies and what precedes them, we believe Rhode Island can adopt more effective policies, laws, and public health strategies to save the lives of our families and friends and neighbors and prevent violence before it even starts. We want to thank and acknowledge all who have worked with us to make progress and create positive systems change, including our partners in courts, law enforcement, the Attorney General's office, the Office of the Governor, the General Assembly, domestic violence advocates from our network of member agencies that work to support survivors and their children every day. Members of our Survivors Task Force SOAR, Sisters Overcoming Abusive Relationships, members of 10 Men, gun safety advocates, and the many community organization and advocacy groups that we collaborate with. We know that you stand with us, and we are grateful. Together, we have taken important steps forward and have made progress for victim safety in our state. Bills we have helped pass since the last homicide report was published include the historic Domestic Violence Gun Surrender Law called Protect Rhode Island Families Act, which passed in 2017. A new law to better protect all children and domestic violence restraining orders. Expanding Rhode Island Crime Victim Compensation Program to include mental health services for children who witness domestic violence and homicides. And the Domestic Violence Address Confidentiality Program that we just passed this legislative session. Yes, we have put in place laws and protections that we are proud of, and we still have so much more work to do. Every year from 2016 to 2020, there were 4 to 7 domestic violence homicide victims in our state. Any life lost to domestic violence is one too many. The report we are releasing today gives us insight into the problem, and we are asking for all of us to learn more about what we can do collectively to prevent future loss of life. What we see consistently is that there are warning signs or lethality risk factors that can predict when a domestic abuse situation has a greater risk of escalating to a deadly incident. These lethality risk factors are highlighted in our report, and they include previous victimization, restraining orders and criminal history of the perpetrator, whether the victim recently ended or tried to leave the relationship, stalking behaviors by the perpetrator, strangulation assaults, and the presence of a gun in a situation. We cannot ignore these warning signs. Consistent with our previous homicide report, firearms remain the most common weapon used to kill victims in Rhode Island. Of the 26 domestic violence homicides that occurred between 2016 and 2020, 42% were committed with a firearm. Firearms were also used to kill bystanders. This means domestic violence homicides not only take the lives of victims of domestic violence, but their loved ones too. 6 of the 26 lives stolen during this period were bystanders. The deadly link between domestic violence and community violence is significant and devastating. In over half of the mass shootings that took place in the United States between 2009 and 2020, the perpetrator also shot a current or former intimate partner or family member, reminding us how dangerous abusive individuals can be, not only to those they claim to love, but to the community as well. In our report, we see that many victims sought protection from the courts and obtained restraining orders. Over half of homicide perpetrators had previous involvement in domestic violence-related court proceedings. 55% of the perpetrators had been subject to a restraining order at some point before the homicide incident. This is why we need our court partners, law enforcement, elected officials, and organizations from hospitals to child protective services to believe victims when they say their lives are in danger. We always need to listen to their concerns of safety. We need to be more responsive as a community because, as this report shows, domestic violence results in the loss of life every year in Rhode Island. This loss of life affects all of us, and we are forever changed. One profound loss that has affected us greatly is the life of Jennifer Silver. Her family joins us here today to honor her beautiful life. Jennifer's life was taken May 20th, 2017. This homicide is included in the report. Jennifer was a beloved mother and aunt and a valued member of the East Providence community who was very passionate about her job, her family, and her pets. We are honored to have her mother join us if she's able. Cheryl, would you like to join us?
Jennifer was my oldest daughter, and I almost had her home almost. Jennifer was my oldest daughter, and I almost had her home. But the person that hurt her couldn't have that. We have got to let these women know that they have a place to go and be safe from this person, and for this person not to know where they are. And it's not just guns and knives, it's hands that kill them too. My daughter was thrown out of the thrown window before she was beaten. And I want all these girls to know that you don't have to live this kind of life. It's not what you were put on this earth for, to get eaten by somebody that had no kind of care in their body or love or anything. And we have to make the stay for these people in jail and these men, and it's not just women, it's men also that get abused. And we need these laws for these perpetrators, for these murderers, to stay in jail for life and not have a chance to get out. Thank you for listening. Have a good day.
We will now read the names of the 26 individuals who lost their lives to domestic violence homicide in Rhode Island between 2016 and 2020. Sherry Price Mann.
Maria Cecilia Velasquez Palacio.
Michael Rogers.
Manuel Laureano.
Cesar Alonso.
Andres Arguello Acosta.
Mary Jo Osgood.
Eudora Gustafson.
Jennifer Silva.
Justine Abaco.
Manarino Nkanamubanzi.
Jeremy Lehman.
Vicky Sonbong.
Donna Dutton.
Michelle Benvenuti.
Rachel Renee.
Lauren Issei.
Clark Murray Sr.
Berta Bogron.
Cheryl Smith.
Vincent Sebastian III.
Christine Oler.
Tanya Gagnon.
Derek Desjardins.
Erica Belcourt.
Paul Zoyce. We'll now take a moment of silence. Thank you. I would now like to introduce a member of the SOAR Task Force of the Coalition. SOAR is Sisters Overcoming Abusive Relationships. Please welcome Cider Hernandez.
Cider Hernandez. I work at a clinic as a master's level supervisor. I enjoy farming and sustainable food for our community. And I am a survivor of domestic violence. I am a member of SOAR. I have been advocating and testifying for domestic violence survivors for over 20 years. One of the reasons that I continue to speak out against domestic violence is because I want everyone that is listening to know that there are now so many resources available for people who are experiencing and have experienced domestic violence. I was 19 years old when I met the man who abused me. At the time, I was living on my own and he was older, so I felt like he would look out for me and have my back. My expectations could not be further away from reality. The abuse escalated soon after I moved in with him. He beat me every single day. I was afraid of him. He was so big that I knew he could kill me with his bare hands. I also knew he owned guns, and he had no problem using them if he had to. He would threaten to shoot and kill my family and me if I ever left or did something he didn't approve of. The fear was so great that leaving him was not an option. I would always try to know where the gun was so that if there was a fight, I could be as far away from it as possible. One day, he locked me in the bathroom, picked me up and threw me against the wall. As I pleaded for him not to beat me, he told me to get undressed. He then left the bathroom and returned with a gun. He pointed the gun at my head and chest and said over and over that he was going to kill me. For 1 hour, he kept me in the bathroom naked, yelling, threatening, and hitting me. That day, I really thought I was going to die. It was only by a miracle of God that he stopped. He put the gun away and left for the evening. I often can't read through a whole article regarding the news story about people killed in domestic violence homicide. As a survivor, I know it could have been me. There are more resources today, but the fear is the same. Whether it happened in the 1990s or it's happening today. Believe people when they say this is happening. Pay attention if they say there is a gun in the house. Domestic abusers are dangerous. Abusers with a gun can be deadly. As victims and survivors of domestic violence, we need more to be done in support of our safety and life. This includes gun protection. We need more to be done to remove deadly weapons from the hands of abusers. As a member of SOAR, I ask all Rhode Islanders to stand with survivors to prevent one more life from being lost. Thank you.
Thank you, Cider, for sharing your story and for all the advocacy that you do every day to make Rhode Island safer for the women and victims of domestic violence that are living in our state. Thank you so much. I'm going to move this a little closer because I'm hearing that it's hard to hear in the back. Is that a little better? Better. Okay. We need all of us, from our fellow Rhode Islanders to our elected officials and legislators, to help take action to end domestic violence homicides. Lieutenant Governor Sabina Matos has been a champion to protect survivors and their children and prevent domestic violence in our communities while raising awareness about the issue. We'd now like to welcome Lieutenant Governor Matos.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Saida, for sharing your story. I know how difficult it is for you to stand here, and you do it because you know that saves lives. So thank you so much for it. Thank you. I want to thank Lucy and the coalition for putting together this report. This is important information that we need, especially for legislators and for elected officials, so we can continue to do the work that is needed to support your agency and agencies that are working to make sure that we do everything we can to prevent domestic violence and to make sure that we have the protections in place to assist the victims of domestic violence. As I was listening to Saida's story, I was reminded of a friend's story that just shared with me recently about her own experience. Hopefully, many people that you're interacting with that have been going through so much, that have been victims of domestic violence, and you have no idea. And it is so hard for them to get to the point where they're comfortable enough with you that they can share the story. And we have to do more. We have to do more to make sure that there are resources available. We have to do more to make sure that we remove the weapons from the homes, especially of those individuals that are perpetrators. And I'm so grateful that we have the commitment of Governor McKee and myself and my office working with the coalition to make sure that we do everything we can to take every step possible to save as many lives as we can. One life is one too many, and we're going to be committed to do that work. We're going to be committed to removing weapons from the homes of those abusers. We're going to be committed to providing resources for the victims. In many cases, the victims are not able to leave because they don't have financial resources. They don't have housing where they can go to. And we have to do so much more. So I just here to say thank you for the report. Thank you for putting this data together. I know that you have the commitment from myself, my office, and the Office of the Governor to do this.
grateful for your support and your solidarity. We now welcome another strong supporter of survivors and families of victims in Rhode Island, Deputy Attorney General Adi Goldstein. The coalition has worked with the Deputy Attorney General in her current role and as a former member of Governor Raimondo's administration to reduce gun violence, protect victims of crime, and limit cyber harassment online against survivors. We now invite the Deputy Attorney General.
Thank you, Lucy. Is this working? Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. Lucy, thank you, Lieutenant Governor Matos, SIDA, survivors, Mrs. Silva, for your really powerful words. Members of the General Assembly who are here with us this morning, members of law enforcement who are here. We're here today to honor and remember the lives of 26 victims who were lost to domestic violence homicides. There are children, partners, parents, friends, valued members of our community. They're not with us here today as we stand and enjoy beautiful, a little bit cold, but we can feel the sun on our faces. They cannot share that experience with us. The tragedy of each of these incidents reverberates across the community and impacts scores of family members, friends, work partners, whose lives remain forever changed and terribly scarred by the loss. Today's release of the Domestic Homicide Report tells the story of each of these victims, as well as the circumstances surrounding their death. You should read it. By collecting this data, the Rhode Island Coalition Against Domestic Violence helps us see the trends and understand the challenges facing our community more clearly. Women are more likely to be victims of intimate partner homicide, over 70%. The ages of the victims range from 24 to 69, with about 40% of the victims under the age of 35. They had most of their lives ahead of them. In many cases, there were warning signs, prior abuse, harassment, stalking, prior criminal cases, restraining orders, and in many cases, over 40%, guns were the weapons of choice. Now, Rhode Island has been a leader in gun safety legislation. You've already heard about some of the most effective tools in our toolbox from Lucy earlier today. The Protect Rhode Island Families Act, passed in 2017, which requires anyone convicted of a domestic violence misdemeanor crime or subject to a restraining order to surrender their firearm. In 2018, Rhode Island passed the seminal red flag law, allowing law enforcement to apply for extreme risk protection orders to seize guns from individuals when there is sufficient evidence to show that they pose an imminent risk of harm to themselves or to others and prevent them from getting it. These laws are effective, but they can be even more effective if family, friends, co-workers, those of us who have concerns about the safety of our loved ones, those who have seen be threatened, beaten, abused, who believe that a perpetrator has or may have access to firearms, report that to law enforcement so that they can take action. They can be even more effective if we recognize that an ex-partner, ex-girlfriend, ex-husband can't get over a relationship, are really depressed, angry, and need help. Let's work to get them the help that they need. And if you have concerns, to alert law enforcement. Ask about getting an extreme risk protection. I cannot thank the work of the coalition enough, the work of all the amazing domestic violence victim advocates who work every day with victims, with families, with children. This is very hard work, and it is impactful. I cannot thank enough the courage of victims and their families who come out, who speak out, and who support. I cannot thank enough people like Zaida who share her story, commit to helping others. Finally, I would like to reiterate on behalf of Attorney General Peter Miller and on behalf of the Attorney General's office, you are not alone. We will fight for you, we will work for you, and we will get justice for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Attorney General, for your comments. I think we're still having trouble hearing, so I'm going to hold it and hope that that works better. How was that? Before I close that? Yeah. Okay. We are so grateful to hear from everyone today about their stories, the lives we've lost, and ways to prevent future violence. We ask everyone here to stand with us. We must work together to create change. We can all be part of the solution, working towards a day when Rhode Island has no more domestic violence homicides. You may ask, how? How can we do more and work together on this issue? Being educated about these continued tragedies and what leads up to them is the first step. These incidents may be preventable, especially when our systems are fully informed about the clear patterns and lethality risk factors that lead to a deadly situation. We know the warning signs, not only from the supporting data, but from the victims who have been calling out to us, telling us that their lives are at risk. Almost half of all of the homicides in Rhode Island were committed with a gun. We know from nationwide studies that access to a gun increases the risk of lethality for a victim of domestic violence by 500%. We must put an end to the violence that takes the lives of the people that we love. And we must continue to improve the state's response to domestic violence. First, to identify high-risk cases, we must enhance screening for dangerousness and lethality risk factors, to include all domestic violence criminal and restraining order cases. This approach requires that Rhode Island establishes a specialized domestic violence court within district court to better screen for risk factors and provide targeted community resources for victims and perpetrators. This can ultimately reduce domestic violence homicides in our state and severe domestic abuse. A specialized domestic violence court will promote greater victim safety and offender accountability, and will enhance informed judicial decision-making in critical misdemeanor domestic violence abuse cases. Many other states and jurisdictions around the country have adopted a domestic violence court model. It is vital that judges, magistrates, law enforcement officials, and other decision makers have a comprehensive understanding of the danger and lethality risks as they make decisions about sentencing, bail, and levels of supervision during probation. We have already begun to lay the groundwork for the creation of a domestic violence court in Rhode Island, and we will continue to work with our court and legislative partners to move towards that goal. We must also ensure strong and continued funding for domestic violence court advocates to assist victims in navigating the court process. We must invest in services for victims and interventions for those who use violence. Additionally, we must fully enforce existing laws that prevent perpetrators and those subject to restraining orders from possessing or obtaining firearms. All systems, including the courts, probation and parole, law enforcement, and gun dealers, must do even more to ensure that perpetrators surrender their weapons. Our systems must enforce gun surrender early in the process in order to stop domestic violence homicides. We are also committed to addressing the root causes of domestic violence to prevent abuse before it even starts. When we work to ensure all people have access to a living wage, quality education, transportation, and safe and affordable housing, we meet the needs of victims and survivors, and we decrease the likelihood that domestic violence will continue to occur. Let's work together on these important policy changes to collectively say no more. Thank you all for joining us today. We welcome you to stop and reflect at the memorial by the Victims' Grove. We honor each victim's life with a domestic violence purple ribbon. And we also invite you to read their names displayed inside the tents. We know how much they meant to our communities, how much they were loved, and how much they are missed. And we will never forget them. We also invite you to take a copy of the report that's available at the tent and learn more about the data, the lethality risks, and what Rhode Islanders can do to prevent domestic abuse in our state. Lastly, make sure you're connected with us. Please sign up and leave your email so that you can receive updates from the coalition about our policy action alerts, trainings, events, and more. Thank you again all for being here. This concludes our program.